States. He was on CNN tonight, essentially dismissing, trashing, a backhanded slap at hydroxychloroquine, despite all of its success stories. Unbelievable. Now, if it was actually a government agency, a real agency, really, he probably would be fired for that. But my medicine cabinet sets the record straight. And Democrats want to use the pandemic to totally restructure voting in the United States. Congressman Matt Gaetz and Chris Hahn are here to debate. And is biometric tracking really the answer to containing and defeating the coronavirus, how we can reopen our government, our country? What does it mean for your privacy? Victor Davis Hanson will explain it all. Plus, we're going to show you part 2, Sean just referenced it, of my exclusive interview with Attorney General Bill Barr. He reveals what he really thinks about Trump's firing of that Intel Inspector General and about John Durham's investigation. But first, this is America in shutdown day 24, some important developments and some emails that I must share with you. As New York remains the COVID cauldron of America, 799 more folks in New York died yesterday, bringing the state's total to a staggering 7,067. Now, that's 43% of all American fatalities. You can get your mind wrapped around that. Now, the public hospitals especially remain battlegrounds, but the state overall continues to make some progress against the virus.
We had 200 net increase in hospitalizations, which you can see is the lowest number we've had since this nightmare started, actually. Change in ICU admissions is the lowest number we've had since March 19th or so. A number of intubations is down.
Well, that's all good news. But New York City is stretched and hurting. The system, the healthcare system, what we were worried about, it's going to bend, but it's not going to break. Thank goodness. It's not going to collapse. But now, with this in mind, it is truly shocking to see how far off almost every model was that informed the draconian response of a nationwide shutdown, a one-size-fits-all kind of shutdown, although the president gave the states some flexibility, which is really smart. Now, first, New York COVID bed projections were totally wrong. Now, look at this graph. The purple dotted line is where we are today, about 18,000 beds needed. The red line is the IHME model funded by Bill Gates. The green line is Columbia University's estimate. Look at where that was. And the other two are from the McKinsey group, two different estimates. But look at that dotted line below. That's where we actually are. Again, this is great news, but these estimates were off by a factor of 6. The high-end mortality prediction is even worse. And as we've spoken about before, that was off by a factor of 33. That's not that graph, it's a different one. Now, New Orleans is going through a very tough time, but things are even looking up there.
We do believe we're beginning to see the flattening of the curve, but we then have to come down on the other side, and we know that cases can spike. We will be easing back towards life as we lived it before COVID-19.
Well, everyone in New Orleans looking forward to that. Philadelphia is showing modest signs of new cases leveling off as well. That's good news. So they say that it's the social distancing that's flattening the curve. But it's also causing another horrific decline. The ongoing isolation, especially among our elderly, is taking its toll. Alexandra Gunnison saw her father in early March. The coronavirus was in the early smoldering stage of its wildfire spread across the country. Soon afterward, his nursing home in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. was closed to visitors. Not long after that, her father, Dana Gunnison, 75, was confined to his room, along with all other residents. He sleeps probably 18 hours a day. I call him every day when I'm able, she said, but he doesn't always pick up. Since he has Parkinson's disease and now no access to physical or speech therapy, it's increasingly difficult to understand him. And Gunnison of West Philly worries that ongoing isolation could accelerate his decline. This is heartbreaking. We have to bring these stories to light as well. I also got this text from a friend who runs a landscape design firm in South Florida. He said, this paycheck protection plan is a mess. I know a large cross-section of small business owners across the country in many different fields and with a variety of banks. No one I know has seen a dime. We're just dying out here. We just cut 2/3 of our staff and put the rest on half pay. Nothing is moving, and by the time SBA loans are processed, we'll all be in 2021. What Pelosi did today is unbelievably dispiriting. Small business owners' lives matter. Cannot wait until things are back to normal. Well, I'll say. So what did Pelosi do today? What is he talking about? Well, she made it clear, and I know this is harsh to say, but it seems like Democrats in Congress almost want as many Americans out of work on Election Day as possible. Schumer and Pelosi held up a new aid package for small business because it doesn't contain all the left-wing goodies they want. All the GOP wanted to do was literally change one number. The $250 billion in the stimulus for small business would become $600 billion. Add another 250, I think it was 350, it would become $600 billion. Now, what they're saying, in other words, the Democrats is, our agenda is more important than your survival, the survival of firms like the one I just referenced. Plus, the unelected medical bureaucrats, what do they keep doing? They keep moving the goalposts for when they think the economy can reopen. Trump was right a month ago when he said this.
Don't forget the doctors. If it were up to the doctors, they may say, let's keep it shut down. Let's shut down the entire world. Let's keep it shut for a couple of years.
Well, Dr. Fauci himself has dismissed as anecdotal, cheap, scalable, decades-old therapies that are already vital weapons in the battle against COVID-19. They show real promise in keeping people not just out of the ICU, but out of the hospital altogether, just like the CDC director. They're like this on the issue. On this subject, this is big news today. French President Emmanuel Macron made a surprise trip to Marseille today to that infectious disease institute of Professor Didier Raoult. Now, he's a renowned epidemiologist in all of Europe. Macron was handed the results of a follow-up study of more than 1,061 COVID patients that were put on a regimen of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. The preliminary report contained some very good news. Now, the results are still being analyzed, but the virologic healing was achieved in 973 of the patients in 10 days, or an efficacy rate of 91%. But what about the critics who cited possible serious complications of these drugs? Well, Professor Raoult found 0 cardiac complications in any of his subjects.